Mary chose to appear in an obscure grotto, a place called Massabielle. And that tells us that God comes to join us where we are, in the midst of whatever is happening in our lives, in the ups and downs of our lives. But it also tells us that God reaches out to us in our sicknesses and infirmities. And this grotto is not only a place where something happened as a geographical place, it's also a place where God gives us a sign by revealing God's heart to our hearts. God comes to tell us that he loves us. And this is at the heart of the message of Lourdes. God loves us as we are, maybe not as we want to be, but as we are. With all our wounds, with all our strengths, with all our weaknesses, with all our gifts. And if you heard Sister Bernadette talking this morning, she would have communicated that in a very joyful way as she spoke about the experience of her healing and the way they spoke, engaged with her and the other lady around the impact of the healing on their lives. And they reminded us that God accepts us for who we are. And it's not surprising that Sister Bernadette spoke about that this morning, because in the apparitions themselves, Mary communicated that acceptance to Saint Bernadette. Bernadette describes this by saying the Virgin looked at her as one person looks to another, reminding us that each of us are created in the image of God. And Bernadette said she felt respected and loved. She had the experience of being seen as a full person, not a marginal person as her society would have seen her. So we are all worthy of the dignity of being the children of God, being loved by God. And if we look at the gospel which we've just read, which was chosen for this year's World Day of the Sick, it reminds us about the inclusive love of God and the compassionate care of our neighbour that we are called to as Christians. Pope Leo, for his message today, writes, St. Luke continues noting that the Samaritan was moved with pity. Compassion in this sense implies a profound emotion that compels us to act. Compassion is the defining characteristic of active love. It's not theoretical, it's not merely sentimental, but manifests itself, the Pope says, through concrete gestures. The Samaritan drew near, treated the wounds, and provided care. It was all in action. Didn't have any flowery words, Action. But it's also notable, he doesn't do it on his own. The Samaritan goes to the innkeeper who would care for the man. And I think that says to us that we're called to be compassionate, but we don't have to try and do it on our own. We're called to unite as a family, which is stronger than the sum of individuals. And I think that's what our pilgrimage reflects. We've all the different sections, the diversity of service, and yet we are one pilgrimage, one body of care. The Apostle John says, love for our neighbour is the tangible proof of the authenticity of our love of God. To serve one's neighbour is to love God through concrete actions. And this is the service we see here in Lourdes. I don't think there are any of us who haven't been touched in some way by an experience of sickness or ill health or trauma. And we can carry with us the pain of that. And we all, in some way, need to experience the healing power of Christ. And the knowledge of being loved by God, doesn't take away the pains in our bodies or the aches and the pains, I think Sister also pointed that out this morning in her own way. But it can help us cure the pain that's in our hearts. And that's what she was sort of saying when she spoke about, the interviewer asked her, you ever wonder why you and not somebody else? And she was talking about how the healing power is beyond the physical. We're going to shortly have the sacrament of the sick. And I've always believed that this sacrament is God reaching out to touch something deep within us. It's God pouring out God's love on us. And it's a reminder of God's care and God's compassion. We are God's children. We are God's creation. Each one of us, no matter what our state of health, what our age, whatever it might be, each one of us is made in the image and likeness of God. So no matter what else we take from here, let us never lose sight of that truth.